Welcome to Total Drawing. Today, we'll draw an owl using Scratchboard. Scratchboard is a material that is white paper with plastic on top and a black scratchable ground. In order to get our drawing onto the Scratchboard, I'm going to transfer the hard edges of a photograph by covering the back of that photograph with pencil or graphite and then lining that up with the edges of my piece of Scratchboard. With a hard pencil, like a number 2 pencil, I'll trace the contours of the owl, and just enough graphite will come off of the back of the page so that I can see my drawing on the Scratchboard faintly. Just a few more marks and we'll be ready to begin scratching. There we are. You'll notice that none of the details were drawn. We'll find the details with our scratching nib. You can use the end of a paper clip or even the point of a razor blade to scratch the surface of your material. A lot like making an ink drawing with a black pen on a white piece of paper, we sometimes use line and hatch and crosshatch. I'll do the same in this drawing, only I'll be making white lines on a black surface. So instead of starting in the darks, instead of starting in the shadows, I'll start in the lighter areas of my drawing and work towards the darker areas. I'm mostly just going to scratch marks off in order to create the values that I see in the photograph, only I'll try to scratch in the direction that the feathers grow. So I'll both create form using light and dark and also describe the textured surface of the owl. There we are. I'll work for a while in the lighter area, which is pretty much the right side of the owl's face. Gotta be careful not to scratch off too much. Right now I'm working in the area below and to the right of the eye that has feathers that are light gray, and the marks in those feathers move in 2 directions. I can always go back and scratch more marks and lighten the area, but it's not possible to add black back into your Scratchboard. By establishing the lights early, that'll prevent me from scratching off too much in the midtones and in the dark areas. I'll be able to compare those middle values with the lightest light of my drawing just to make sure I don't scratch off and go past that value. On the beak, I don't really have texture to help determine which directions my stroke goes, like in the feathers. So I'll just work in a cross contour fashion with an upward curve across the top of the beak. In essence, my strokes are traveling in the same direction that the planes of the beak are traveling or are changing. I'm just going to go ahead and put a hard light edge up against the left side of the beak just to make sure it's crisp and stands out sharply from the black shape, the black triangle just to the left of the beak, which is part of the owl's mouth. And gradually I'm going to work my way into the darker side of our owl, constantly comparing the collective value of my strokes with both my reference and the lighter part of the owl that I have already mostly completed. I'll look for smaller and smaller marks, working from larger patches of gray, black, and white towards smaller patches of gray, black, and white, working from broad to specific. Don't forget the answer is in your reference photograph, so continually check the direction of your strokes against the direction of the feathers or fur, depending on what type of animal you may choose for your Scratchboard project. Scratchboard can be purchased from any number of online art suppliers. Some brick and mortar arts and craft stores will carry Scratchboard, but often the under surface is not white, it's a rainbow or a color, less suitable for serious art illustration. All right, I'm going to start working on that light gray patch of feather just directly below the eye on the right, down near the bottom of our composition. Want to make sure that the edges of that patch stay soft, different from some of the small, bright white feathers or tips of feathers. Be sensitive to edge quality. All right, now I feel like I may be taking off too much material right now, but that's okay. Believe it or not, there's still more black material in the lightest part of the owl just to the right of the beak. I'll have to lighten that spot in order for some of these other light gray areas to not overpower what should be our lightest light. You'll want to try whatever tool you use to scratch off your material. You want to try that in different orientations. That is, for my stylus nib, I might scratch with it right side up and also flip it upside down occasionally. You'll discover that by rolling the stylus between your fingers and scratching using the nib with different orientations, you'll get different line quality. That is, you'll get thick lines and thin lines out of the same tip without needing to change, but by only changing its orientation to the paper. Not much farther to go. I'm going to go ahead and work the feathers just next to the beak a little more to brighten them up. And it'll be time to separate the owl from the background. Now in my reference photograph, there's just black and green. Of course, we're not using color. This is all black and white. But I do like where the light is because it helps to define and carve out the contour of our owl. The owl, however, is made with a lot of very fine strokes. I mean, there's large marks in the owl, but most of those marks are pretty tiny. So I'm going to use fatter lines for the background just in order to give another level of contrast between our owl and the background. All right, a few little stray marks in the background just to fade our value away. Look for a couple of more poignant details. And that's it. We're done. So if you like hatching and cross-hatching with line, give Scratchboard a try. Thanks for watching Total Drawing.